little bit more about this in the context of Vipassana later in the retreat. But certainly here in this practice where we're really just resting in that open, spacious stillness of awareness, this experience can come. And if it does, again, it's irrational fear. There's nothing going out. The only thing going out of existence is a false sense of me. So we can just rest in that awareness and not really pay any attention to the fear. Just let it go, because it's irrational. And that is also related to one topic I talked about yesterday. That I said that when in the Shamatha practice we are cultivating these qualities of relaxation, stability, clarity, then these three qualities of mind become more and more manifest. Clarity in terms of our mind becoming more and more clear. Non-conceptuality in terms of our mind becoming more and more still. And bliss, that our mind becomes more and more joyful. And that it's easy to get caught up in these experiences because each one of them is very pleasant. And so I said yesterday there that when these experiences start to arise, rather than getting caught up in them and craving and grasping to them, rather use these as signposts that our practice is heading in a good direction, and use these very experiences to go deeper into the practice. But there is another danger here, and that is to misinterpret these experiences, particularly this second one here. This experience of stillness. So we saw just now that sometimes because we have that stillness in this practice, we can have fear because our normal sense of identity is dropping away. But also what can happen is when we start to have this experience of stillness, our mind has gone very quiet. It's easy to misinterpret this experience as some sort of profound experience of the nature of reality. Because, as we're going to see on day 9 when we talk about emptiness, a realization of emptiness is also a non-conceptual experience. And it's also very clear and blissful. So it's very easy to misinterpret this experience here, this open, spacious stillness, as some sort of profound experience of nature of mind, nature of reality. And then, of course, we may think we're very highly advanced on the spiritual path and, maybe I'm nearly enlightened and, So then the ego gets hold of that and then it gets puffed up and goes, well, I'm really highly advanced practitioner, I'm better than everyone else, and everything I do is with wisdom, so I can do whatever I want. Disaster. So, therefore, here, the difference is this experience of stillness is simply an experience of stillness. There's not really any insight in that at all. And we'll look at the difference between this experience and an experience in terms of emptiness. And actually, when we talk about this non-conceptuality here, in the context of shamatha, if you look at the fine print, it actually says no coarse conceptuality. Meaning there is still, at a very deep level, some subtle conceptuality happening in this practice. Because even if we're resting in that stillness, there's still a sense of me, the meditator, resting in this experience. So that's still conceptual, dualistic. Whereas in a realization of emptiness, which is non-conceptual, there's no conceptuality at all. There's no sense of me, the meditator, at all in that experience. There's just the experience of emptiness. So that's one way to distinguish, is that if we're resting in some sort of stillness experience and we're having this thought, I am resting in stillness, that conclusively proves you're not realizing emptiness. So therefore, to be careful about misinterpreting these experiences. And there's a very high level of overestimation in the spiritual path. You know, people come into spiritual path and start to have some little sorts of experiences, and then suddenly they think, wow, I'm way up here. This is very, very common. So to really let go of that idea. And therefore, if we're having some sorts of experiences, we're not sure whether they're even valid or whether we're just spacing out or what, it's good to consult with a qualified teacher about those experiences so they can set you straight and really keep you heading in a good direction. Otherwise, we can come up with all sorts of fantasies about what's happening in our practice. Okay. So what I'd like to do now then is, again, go back into the practice. And again, we'll just add one more thing to the practice that you may find helpful as a beginner. So in the last session, we added this idea of adjusting the gaze. So remember, if we're finding that we're getting agitated, tense, or distracted, it can be helpful to lower the gaze a little bit. And if we find that we're getting dull, drowsy, or just blank, to elevate the gaze, even to the point where you maybe actually are looking straight ahead. So you can play around with the level of your gaze and see how that it can adjust it according to what's going on. So that was the one thing we added in the last one. What I'd like to add here is, as we did with the practice yesterday of observing the mind, here, if you get completely, yesterday I said if you got completely caught up in all your thoughts and all the time, then a backup strategy, a short-term strategy that could be helpful initially is to go back into the body, focus on the rhythm of the breath, anchor yourself in that, and then a little bit in the corner of your mind, just observe your thoughts and emotions. So we brought that in as a sort of temporary short-term strategy. So then you would mainly focus on the rhythm of the breath and just a little bit notice thoughts and emotions. And then over time, start to pay more attention to the thoughts and emotions and a little bit less to the rhythm of the breath. And then eventually only pay attention to that and let go of the breath. So that way we can bring ourselves into the practice. So similarly here, in this practice, you may still find that even though you're resting in awareness, you're still getting caught up in all your thoughts and emotions and sounds and sensations and so forth. Or you may have the opposite experience. You're doing this, but you're completely lost or blank or don't really know what you're doing. So then it can be helpful to go back into the body again, go back in the rhythm of the breath and focus on that. Just anchor yourself in the rhythm of the breath and then have that as your main object, and then just a little bit in the corner of your mind, notice that stillness of awareness that is sort of there. And then slowly pay more attention to that stillness of awareness and less to the breath, and eventually let go of the breath altogether. So again, if you're finding that you're just getting caught up in all sorts of appearances, or you're completely lost or blank, then go back into the body and do that. Okay? So let's go back into the practice again. You begin by preparing the body. And preparing the mind. Allowing the mind to come to rest in the present moment. And simply becoming aware of the rhythm of the breath. Allowing the eyes to be at least partially open, resting your gaze in the space in front of you. And simply releasing all appearances, allowing the mind to come to rest. Resting in awareness itself. Simply knowing that you're aware. And if you find yourself getting caught up in any agitation, tension, or distraction, lower your gaze, release your awareness into space, releasing all appearances and relaxing completely. If you find yourself falling into dullness, drowsiness, or having a blank mind, elevate your gaze and sharpen your focus, knowing that you're aware. And simply rest in that open, spacious stillness of awareness. And if you find that you're simply completely caught up in appearances, or you're completely lost in this practice, then go back into the body and focus on the rhythm of the breath. So have as your main focus the rhythm of the breath. And then just a little bit in the corner of the mind, notice that open, spacious stillness of awareness.